Hey, thanks for joining me. So in this video, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, which is make an action movie short. I've always wanted to try this, but I didn't quite know how to put it together. But thanks to my friend Stephen Rennie, who's a fight coordinator in Hollywood, and Zhiyun, who are willing to sponsor me for the gear in this video, I was able to finally do it. So we made a little movie. I'm going to show you the short film first, and then afterwards we'll get into the behind the scenes and how it was all done. Okay, let's roll the film.
You okay?
I'm sorry.
You okay?
I'm sorry.
Stop! No fighting! I said no fighting!
Hope you enjoyed the short film. Now I'm going to go in depth into how we made it. So I came up with a really open-ended concept. It's just people get a notification on their phone and then they attack Jackie. And within that framework, I was able to basically incorporate anybody who was available to shoot with us, any location that we were available to shoot at, and just somehow work it into the story. Okay, now let's get into the production of the film, starting with this first shot of Jackie. So this was done with the Zhiyun Weebill 3S gimbal on a monopod so that I could get extra height. All I did was put my Viltrox 16mm f1.8 lens, I'll talk more about that later. I put that on my Sony a7S III camera, and I put the gimbal on the monopod, and then I raised it way above my head and walked straight toward Jackie as he walked in the direction of the camera. This is opposing motion, so as he was walking toward me, I was walking toward him, which creates an extra feeling of movement in the shot. Then I used the gimbal to get more shots of Jackie walking as he was pursued by the bad guy.
Action!
Then for this opening shot of the bad guy, we used the Zhiyun X100 light, which is an extremely portable 100-watt COB light, and we flashed it across the scene as if it was the headlights of passing cars. This is a bicolor light, so we were able to tune the color to look a lot colder than the rest of the ambience, which helps to sell that headlight effect. And for these establishing shots of the other bad guy, Mr. USA Jacket, we used the Zhiyun 5-Ray FR100C.
Is this a bad guy color?
Which is 100 watts. It's an LED tube light, and you can change the color as well as the color temperature.
Slow, slow, pushing in faster, 3, 2, 1, and stopping.
So you can basically create any color of light that you want with this. And having two of them allows me to create opposing colors of light. So one of the lights was used to enhance the redness of the light on his face because he answers the phone, his phone is red, and then his face turns red. And then to create a cooling, contrasting light behind him, we use the other light set to the color cyan. Then we did the first fight. So even though this is a really short fight, it still took quite a while to coordinate because we shot it as an orbiting gimbal shot. So the gimbal was going around the fight, which makes it a lot harder to coordinate. And to explain why, I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of stacking. Stacking is a term in fight choreography that means using the camera's angle to hide a fake hit. They're just throwing a punch several feet away from the other performer, and because the camera is over somebody's shoulder, the person's body hides the distance between the two performers, and as long as the reaction is appropriate, it looks like the punch connects with the other person. That's a basic Hollywood trick that's been used for probably 100 years now. The problem with stacking is that it doesn't work as well when the camera is moving around the subject, because then that perfect angle where the two people are aligned keeps moving. So what Steven did was he coordinated a fight that would look good even if the camera wasn't at any particular angle at any particular time. You basically have to coordinate a real fight that doesn't require stacking. They were actually making contact, which is a lot more dangerous, and you should only do it if you're a seasoned stunt performer. So it took about an hour to rehearse and another hour to shoot just for these two quick shots.
3, 2, 1, boom!
Now let's get into the chase scene. So we ran through Bangkok, trying to throw as much of the character of the city into the backgrounds of these shots as possible. And I filmed basically just 3 types of shots for the coverage. I filmed a rear follow shot in POV mode. Then I went around to the side and I filmed side tracking shots of Jackie as he ran with my gimbal in lock mode. And then we got front view shots, but there was no way I was going to be able to run forward, point the gimbal back, and film Jackie without one of us either hitting a car or another person or hitting each other. So my solution was to do sort of a DIY Sonoricam. I gave the gimbal to Jackie in pan follow mode, so it was following only the pan, and I had him hold it out in front of him using the monopod to wedge against his body to keep it a little bit more stable. And then Jackie just went off and ran on his own, and he recorded himself basically. And I think that really close-up wide-angle look on his face helps to accentuate the tension and the craziness of the scene. All All right, here's the scene where a bad guy trips Jackie and he crashes into a table full of beer. We did this scene because we wanted to have a little showcase for our friend Eli, who is 6'9", and he always plays these big, monstrous, tough guys in movies. So for this scene, I just wanted to subvert that a little bit and have Eli turn out to be a super nice guy.
You okay?
We shot with 2 cameras at once because we were spilling liquids and we didn't know how many times we'd be able to do it. In terms of lighting, the cafe was really dark because we were shooting at like 1 o'clock in the morning and they were actually closed. So we supplemented the existing lighting with the X100 on a monopod raised up way in the distance. We put the globe attachment on the X100 to soften the light just a little bit. I want to take a moment here and talk about a lens that I've been mentioning throughout this video, the Viltrox 16mm f1.8 full frame autofocus lens. So I want to thank Viltrox for sponsoring this portion of the video. I'm going to give you more information about it because I've been super impressed by it. Without this lens, I don't think the film would have had quite the same look because I needed that really wide field of view and I needed autofocus and I needed to be able to keep the lens on my gimbal so it couldn't have been too heavy. And thankfully this lens is not so heavy. It's only about 550 grams. So I'm really happy I was able to use this lens for this shoot because it allowed me to get these shots without using a slower lens that would have required a higher ISO and therefore more noise in the image. So now I've got the lens mounted up on my camera and I'm going to show you some of the features. It's got this really cool screen up here that lets you see your focus distance and whether you're in autofocus or manual focus, and also the aperture. It also has a couple of function buttons, which I believe are custom assignable, and you can also use them to set A/B focus points. The lens has a 77mm filter thread, which just happens to be the preferred filter size that I use. And it has a really close minimum focus distance of 0.27 meters, which is right here. That's how close you can focus. I was really surprised by how many creative ideas I came up with just because I had this lens at my disposal. For instance, I was able to get the front view of the Tuk Tuk driver as he drove the Tuk Tuk just by holding the gimbal in front of his face. Or even this wide shot of the fight scene on the elevated walkways. I was able to keep the ISO low thanks to the f1.8 aperture, which gave me more dynamic range to work with, so you get to see more detail of the city in the background. So if you want to find out more about this Viltrox 16mm f1.8 lens, there will be a link in the description of this video, so go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, let's move on with the breakdown. The next scene we filmed was a Tuk Tuk fight, and surprise, surprise, it is really hard to film a fight on a Tuk Tuk because there's basically no space to put the camera. The first shot you see here was once again done on that 16mm lens on the gimbal, and the gimbal was in lock mode. And I leaned my whole body back to move the camera through the Tuk Tuk. After that, I wanted an intense fight between Jackie and the drunk passed out guy who wakes up. The shooting for the actual fighting was split between Steven and me. So I filmed the front view where the camera leans out the side of the Tuk Tuk as Jackie's falling out. And then Steven took over and he did his ultra precise whip pans with the guys as they were fighting. He likes to whip the camera precisely with the choreography so that you follow exactly what's going on as if you're in there in the fight with them. And the hardest shot out of all these was the front view of the driver because I didn't want to try to do a hard mount, which is where you physically mount the camera to the Tuk Tuk, because we didn't quite have the right grip equipment and it would have taken too long to configure it. I ended up holding the gimbal in front of the driver as he was driving and bracing myself, holding on to wherever I could. Of course, on a real movie, they would have used a better mounting system, but this was the quick and dirty way just to get it done. For this shot here, Jackie really fell out of the Tuk Tuk and he really fell onto his back, and Steven shot it to make sure that we got the shot right and we didn't have to do it again. So that's another reason why it was really great having a pro like him on this shoot. The blue light that you see on Jackie's face is coming from 2 5-ray FR100Cs placed in the shop next to him. Okay, on to the Khao San Road scene. So if you've ever been to Bangkok, you know that Khao San Road is a crazy party street that goes really late at night. I wanted the feeling of what it's really like to be out at night in Bangkok on a weekend. So what I did was I mounted my Viltrox 50mm f1.8 lens on the camera on the gimbal still, and I put my gimbal in lock mode, and then I tracked next to Jackie, walking next to him. Now this may look like a simple shot when you view the final product, but the shooting of it was actually really tough because there wasn't a clear space for me to walk through at the appropriate distance. So in order to keep him properly framed, I had to keep up with him walking sideways through the narrow gap in the tables and also avoiding any stray people who happened to walk through the path at the same time. To keep him in focus here, I had my camera preset manual focus at the point where Jackie would probably be walking for most of the shot. And after that, we got these shots where the camera was in front of Jackie. In order to light Jackie consistently throughout these shots, I had him hold an FR100C just below the frame line. And I changed the color of the light in different shots so it looked like Jackie was passing through different areas. Then I switched back to my 16mm lens and I did some crazy POV shots of the lion attacking the camera and then of Jackie reacting to being attacked. Going into a POV shot instantly makes a scene feel more intense because the audience suddenly feels like they're in the perspective of one of the characters instead of just standing outside and watching. And then there's a tone shift here. So I went from those slow-mo gimbal shots, which were shot at 60p, to jittery 24p handheld shots, so you would feel that craziness of the energy. This scene of the trickers attacking Jackie was shot as one take with the camera on the gimbal 16mm lens, just pushing forward really slowly and just letting all the action unfold in the frame. And then in post, I reframed the shot using the transform controls to pan and tilt the camera to keep up with the action. And then I also added some camera shake to make it look more chaotic. All right, let's talk about the big boss fight at the end. So here, Jackie confronts one of the original attackers from the first fight scene. One thing Steven told me is that it's a lot harder to shoot a good one-on-one fight than it is a one-on-many. Because in a one-on-many fight, where one guy's fighting many people, you can have just one really good stunt performer, and then the rest just have to be good enough. Whereas with a one-on-one fight, to make it really look like an exciting duel, you need to have two really strong performers who know how to play off each other. So in this case, Jackie and Ron are both really high-level performers. Ron has actually fought against Jackie Chan, so Steven was really confident that we could pull off a good scene with the two of them together. We start with this opening shot. I shot that in POV mode on my gimbal with the 50mm lens. So there's an old school trick here where Jackie, after walking around the corner, threw himself back out, which of course is much safer than having Ron throw him. That was Steven's idea, and I think it was a clever way to reintroduce the big bad guy into our scene. Now, I didn't want this fight to feel superhuman. I didn't want it to feel like these guys could take infinite hits and just keep going and going and going. Because in this movie, Jackie's character is not invincible. So I told Steven I wanted the fight choreography to reflect the fact that Ron is bigger, Ron's stronger. So for instance, at the beginning of the fight, Jackie gets a few hits in, but then immediately he gets headbutted and knocked back into a railing. This part of the fight was once again shot by Steven because I knew I needed that precision handheld work to make it all make visual sense. For this roundhouse kick shot, I changed the camera to 60p and I filmed overhead, standing on a railing, holding the camera as high as I could above me. I felt like we needed that top-down angle to clearly see what was going on. Then I put my camera back on the gimbal, kept the 16mm lens on there, and went really far back to get this ultra wide shot showing the two guys slugging it out with the cityscape in the background. I love in fight scenes where they take that moment to step back and give you an idea of where they're fighting, the environment. This was a real fall that Ron took on the concrete. He put some pads under his clothes, and then he just took the wreck twice. From what they told me, as a stunt performer, you just get used to it. You learn how to take the pain and what kind of pain is acceptable and you'll recover from, and what kind of pain means that you injured yourself. So you basically just learn to fall the right way. We shot this with two cameras. One on a 24mm lens getting a wider shot, and the other one with a 50mm lens at ground level, catching Ron's reaction as he smashes against the floor. Another great thing about working with real stuntmen is that they can accurately hit the same spot over and over as they take their wrecks. So Ron pointed to a spot on the ground where he would fall. I pre-focused there, and then he hit that spot twice because we did 2 takes of the fall. And then I came up with this little moment here where Jackie is like seeing if Ron is down and then reacting like, oh my God, once Ron starts getting up. I just thought it needed a little bit of a comedy moment there. And then there's a little bit more fighting here, shot with a 24mm lens handheld, ending in Ron's signature sidekick, pinning Jackie up against the wall. Throughout Ron's career, he's been known for his sidekicks, so I wanted to pay a little homage to that at the end of the fight. So I want to thank everybody who came out to help making this film, and I especially want to thank Steven Rennie for coming out because he has worked on much bigger productions than this, and I'm just honored that he wanted to make a little short film with me. And of course, thanks to Zhiyun for sponsoring the video. So hope you enjoyed it. Please click like, subscribe, and that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.